Do you remember a few years ago when we were mandated to wear masks to help prevent the spread of COVID-19? Well, regardless of your opinion, if that was a good idea or not, I wish that there was something as easy as putting on a mask that would help prevent the spread of stress and anxiety. Now, it does take a little bit more work than just putting on a mask, but I do believe it is possible. I would also argue that we live in a safer world than we've ever lived in before. And yet, studies have shown that there's more stress, anxiety, depression in our world than ever. I wonder why that is. I believe we live in a safe world. We have seatbelts, we have helmets, we have prescription drugs, we have vaccines, we know about hand washing, we know about cleaning, we know about how to help keep each other physically healthy, right? So we have made a lot of progress in many ways in our world, but I feel like we've digressed in preventing the spread of anxiety and stress. We are much more aware of things now, so much more quickly than we used to be. For example, if there was a hurricane or an earthquake or something across the world, it would take months for the other side of the world to learn about it, if they ever did. And now we have news lines bombarding us constantly with the latest tragedy that happened, and we share those tragedies really easy. And I think that encourages the spread of stress and anxiety. So that is today's topic, the contagion of stress. Welcome to Burnout Solutions, a podcast designed to help high achievers and healthcare professionals understand stress and how it can lead to burnout. Together, we'll explore how your brain and nervous system naturally work and why they sometimes hold you back, and how to overcome those challenges to fully enjoy the success you've worked so hard to create. I am your host, Mona Tippett, registered nurse, burnout coach, and resiliency educator. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are talking about contagious stress. And it's super interesting to me how themes seem to pop up. And I see contagious stress a lot. And people have asked me about it recently. And I've seen it a lot in our communities recently with news headlines, with attacks in school and attacks on people, and dysregulated people acting dysregulated and being really violent, and how that really does spread anxiety in a community and stress. And it is very true that stress spreads like wildfire through a room, through a team, on a shift, through a school, in a household, and like I've seen recently across whole communities. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the science behind it and just kind of share some stories, give you a few tools that you can use next time you feel like somebody's stress is creeping into your body. And, why is this important? Why does this matter? It's because stress just doesn't live in one person's head. It moves. And when we can learn and be aware of how it moves, you can stop passing it around, right? It's contagious. It's like a cold. When we get a cold, we wash our hands, we take our vitamins, that kind of thing. And I wish you could just put on a mask and it would stop you from getting stressed out, but you can't. What you can do is you can become a calm person that can spread regulation. And I talk all about that in the podcast, co-regulation. So this isn't going to be the exact same, but they do overlap a little bit. So I wanted to start out with a story. A few years ago, I was driving down to a women's conference, and I went with a friend, and I met her. And we were driving down together, and we were talking about our kids and, leaving the family and all the work you have to do as a parent to prepare to leave town. It's like almost so much work. Sometimes we wonder if it's even worth it, but just who is picking up who, arranging rides to school and home and whatnot. And my daughters were biking to school. Now, they don't bike routinely because they have to cross a road that has 6 lanes. There is a stoplight and a crosswalk, but people just don't pay attention. And I told this friend, my daughters are biking across this road to get to school. And she became very alarmed at this news. And she said, no, like somebody has to be able to bring them. Did you hear about? And then she proceeded to tell me about a common friend, and their son was actually hit while biking. He was little in elementary school, and he was in the ICU at that point. And because of that story and because of that incident, she was on more alert that biking just wasn't safe. Now, I had heard about that story, and I had taken that story into consideration. And I told my brain, listen, just because this tragic accident happened where one little boy was hit by a car as he was biking does not increase the chances that my daughter is going to get hit while crossing the street. It does not increase the likelihood of that happening or the chance that she would get hit. And so I walked it through my brain. I went through and I said, okay, if there was an accident, what would happen? Who would they call? Who would I have on backup? And I went through the whole scenarios of what if, and I felt very comfortable having my girls ride their bikes to school. And I told her that. I said, I've gone through it. It's okay. And she said, no. We need to call. And she knew a common friend. She's like, let's call her and see if she can bring your kids to school. And I politely declined. And she was not happy about this, but she went along with it. And I thought this is super interesting how our brain becomes more on high alert when we have seen something that could affect us or a similar situation turns on our stress response. And that is what happens in life. That is what happens in our workplaces. That is what happens in our families, is when we have a current stressor or a current experience that matches up with a past experience. It turns on our amygdala, which is our fire alarm, and says, this is going to happen, when in reality, it's not. So where else does this happen? Years ago, when I was working in labor and delivery, I loved that job, but there was one nurse that was really interesting and she stuck out to me. She was a little bit difficult to be around. She had her good days and her bad days. But what I thought was interesting is she would throw charts. Like, this was back early 2000s when we actually had paper charts. And when she was upset, she would just throw charts and we'd get super snappy. And everyone was like, eek, beware. She would roll her eyes at the doctor. She would shout across the nurse's station when she was frustrated. And it was super interesting because when you walked into the report room and she was there, everybody was silent. Everyone had that look on her face like, don't make her mad. And every shift that I worked with her when she was like this, everybody was more on edge. Everybody snapped a little bit more. Everybody was a little more defensive. I would guess that there were more mistakes made and mistakes got blamed faster. I would even guess that the patients felt the tension. So on paper, nothing about our shift had changed except this one person. The workload was the same. The acuity was the same. The amount of patients was the same. But the atmosphere had changed. And this is another story of how contagious stress can be in action. That pattern stuck with me. And so I decided myself, okay, I am not going to be the one who causes a stressful shift. But I started to watch how one person's tone, their posture, their energy really can change how quickly other people's, breath can shorten, how quickly other people's patience ran out, and how quick temperatures can rise. And it was a live demonstration of how stress can spread. So let's pause there and go to some science about what stress contagion is and how it happens. So stress contagion is when one person's stress triggers a stress response in another person. Not just emotionally, but this is physiologically happening. And if you were to pause and pay attention and slow things down, you could see this happening. Observers can show measurable changes in their heart rate. in their cortisol levels and other stress markers simply from watching someone under stress. Lab studies have shown people who watched stressed people show spikes in their heart rate and their stress hormones. And we're not talking about metaphors. We're talking about literally biology. Now, movie creators use this to their advantage, right? I mean, when you watch a movie and it's super intense and your face is big and wide, your eyes are open, you're holding onto your seat. I remember in high school, my boyfriend's mom would stand up and shake out her hands and walk around at all the intense parts of the movie. I thought it was kind of interesting. And now I'm like, oh, wow, that's such a good thing to do, to shake out that stress. But you really are pulled into the movie, whether it's happy or sad or scary or suspenseful. And that is because your nervous system is mirroring the tone of the movie. So that is what we as humans do. We see sensory cues, a tone of voice, a facial expression, a body posture, the tempo of movement of music, and they all act as signals. So our nervous system is designed to read those signals quickly because in ancestral times, reading the group state was very important for our survival. When you saw someone tightened, your body would often tighten too. Our brains are wired to resonate with others, right? So we have mirror neuron systems and empathic circuits that make it possible for us to pick up on others' emotions and sometimes to feel those same emotions. People with higher empathy tend to absorb stress more. Now, this is also interesting to know that a lot of times you can see somebody who is on the neurological diversity spectrum because they don't pick up on those social cues. They don't understand when other people are sad or hurting or frustrated, or they don't understand sarcasm, right? They miss those cues because of their diversity, which is totally fine. I actually find some of that refreshing that they don't feed into those same things that other people do. Anyway, back to the science. So polyvagal science explains that the same neural systems that allow us to socially engage also turn us to safety or danger cues. So when someone is in a mobilized fight or flight state, that social engagement system picks up those cues and will shift our autonomic state towards alertness. So in short, our social nervous system is really built to sync with others, and that is adaptive. But when the cue is stress, we get pulled into it. Another example. So just imagine you're at, a meeting somewhere, staff meeting, a family council meeting, a work meeting, anything. And one person snaps a question and their jaw tightens, they sigh loudly, or they roll their eyes. And before you've even glanced over, your shoulders are a little higher, your breath is a little faster, and you instantly feel a little bit less patient as well. So that is your autonomic nervous system responding to their cues. Your body is mirroring the perceived threat that you just saw. Now, I've thought a lot about the phrase, when mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. And it kind of sounds like a joke, but part of it is true. Parents, especially primary caregivers, often set the emotional tone for the household. They are the culture keeper. They are the regulator or the dysregulator. And children are remarkably attuned to their caregivers' cues, so they can match their breathing, their facial expression, their tone. And again, remember, children are very good at observing, but they're not very good at interpreting. So that is why your little kid mirrors you. That is why they talk like you do. That is why they do facial expressions like you do. That is why they can think similar and act similar. So I have a mini me, and when this child talks and has facial expressions, a lot of adults just say, you are just like your mom. Your mom would say exactly that. I can't even look at you without thinking of your mom. And I actually think it's hilarious because this mini me does a lot of things like me. So anyway, but you can see this, right? That when parents walk into a room or into a home and that parent is wound up, that the environment can change instantly. And the children's bodies can start to mirror things without even hearing a word. So there have been so many studies of parent-child pairs that show that children's psychological responses, their heart rate, even their cognitive performance, their cortisol levels do go up. And this is directly associated with their parent stress. Acute and recent stress in parents can predict how kids' bodies and attention systems will show up. Super interesting, or maybe not surprising at all to teachers, that you can sometimes pick up that things aren't going well at home. It's just how that student is acting in class. Parents really can shape a child's nervous system. I thought about this also just the other day. One of my friends said that her child had this big event coming up and she had been losing sleep over it. And I thought, wow, wow, I used to be like that, where I would lose sleep with my child when something was coming up, like a big test, a tryout, a concert. And often that parent's anxiety actually can leak out in small ways and affect the child. And that child can start to feel, oh, my parent is worried about me. Maybe I won't run as fast. Maybe I won't perform as well as the piano. Maybe I won't pass the spelling bee. Maybe I won't do well on the ACT. And so I really believe that as caregivers and inside our home, that we need to be extra cautious in how we show up, especially when it deals with our children. It also increases your allostatic load, which is the physical effects of stress on your body. And it is not helpful for you to have anxiety and stress about the things that your child is doing, because you cannot influence that as much as you want to. That child is actually the one who's going to perform. So my recommendation is that you show up better, you show up confident, you process your own emotions so that you can arrive better. As a teacher, if there's a big test coming up, you arrive with confidence in your students. When you come on a shift with other people, you arrive with, hey, everything's going to go well. We're a great team. We support each other. We help each other. And we're going to get through this really busy shift just fine. So pay attention to your internal state and know that it is a powerful signal to those around us. Now, this isn't about blaming parents for anything or managers or leaders, but this is just about awareness and agency. And when you know that your state matters, you can take small, actionable steps to regulate yourself, which can protect you and your family, your shift, and those around you. And I wanted to share my own experience with changing my nervous system and why it's been so beneficial. So a few years ago, I started my nervous system training. And at that time, I was not happy with a few of my closest relationships. And my mentor, Dr. Gentry, said, if you work on your own nervous system, if you learn to regulate yourself better, if you learn to rewire your brain and nervous system and recreate different patterns and learn to act differently, I promise you that your relationships will get better. And I thought it was a big promise, and I kind of didn't believe him. Maybe you've heard the saying, it only takes one person to change a relationship. Well, I can tell you that that's actually true. I just had a birthday and my oldest son took me out to dinner to Chandler's Steakhouse, and we got the VIP table, and it was just a really special night for me. And a few years ago, I would have never imagined that happening. I get a little bit emotional thinking about it, but I can tell you that me changing my nervous system and me showing up better and more regulated really has affected my relationships for the better. I also sleep better. I also am less stressed and I have less anxiety, and I'm not burned out anymore. And I am more compassionate with myself and other people. And so much of my life has changed just for the better. And I was thinking about that on the way home from this dinner, that I'm so thankful that I was the one who took the opportunity to change myself And it really has made a difference. And I would bet if you asked my kids, they would say that they have a different mom. And that is really why I believe in the power of co-regulation. That's why I believe in the power of taking the steps and taking the action, not just learning, but actually taking the action to retrain your brain and nervous system. So I did want to throw that in there. And now we'll move on. Now I did want to move a little bit from just general contagious stress to actually secondary and tertiary traumatic stress. I talk a lot about this in my burnout program. Much too long to go into here, but just a little bit of information. So when a person is exposed to other people's trauma or heavy stress and it's repeated or intense, it can lead to secondary traumatic stress. A person can actually have symptoms that look a lot like post-traumatic stress disorder, like intrusive thoughts, hypervigilance, avoidance, depression, anxiety. And secondary traumatic stress can also look like vicarious trauma, which can describe a more gradual shift in somebody's disposition and their identity after repeated exposure to other people's trauma. This is especially relevant in healthcare and first responders, in the caregiving roles when anyone is taking care of humans. And why is that? Because as a healthcare worker, you often see people getting hurt. You often see people in pain, in fear. You are around families who are scared for their loved ones. And you are constantly around people who are hurting, especially ERs, seeing a lot of human beings in a dysregulated state because of the pain or trauma that they have experienced. So it is driven by repeated exposure to suffering, to patient death, to viewing child abuse or gunshots or gang violence, high acuity trauma. And this is your nervous system trying to protect you because it actually picks up those cues as if it happened to you. Tertiary traumatic effects is when you take that stress as somebody who has been traumatized, and that stress ripples to your family and your community. It's how trauma has a ripple effect. So, for example, family members of frontline health workers during high stress periods have reported increased stress and anxiety just themselves because the caregiver's stress becomes part of the household's emotional landscape. And some people call this household transmission. And this is very real and it is important. And why this matters for professionals is if you work in healthcare or in trauma-exposed roles, stress contagion and secondary traumatic stress aren't just theoretical, but they really do affect your job satisfaction, the quality of the care that you give, the chance that you are going to burn out, the chance that you're going to switch careers. And it is a real thing. So when you can recognize the difference between contagious stress in the community versus an actual accumulating pathological response to the traumatic stress that you're exposed to, this is key to getting help early on. And just the awareness and understanding that I am exposed to this more often can help you preserve your own nervous system. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to interrupt the spread and what are some practical tools. I help my clients one-on-one through this. So if you feel like you need help, reach out. But these are just some things that you can do. And the first is notice it. Awareness really is the first defense. So pay attention to your body. Pay attention to your breath, your jaw, your shoulders. Are your shoulders touching your ears all the time? Do you have tension around your eyes and your eyebrows? And do you feel like you have that really tight headset on your head? And is your chest tight? Just doing quick body relaxation keeps you from absorbing somebody else's stress and anxiety. The next one is having a boundary or having a few one-liners to help you when you feel like you're dysregulated or somebody is dysregulated and coming to you. And because sometimes you just need to create a little bit of relational space. So here are just a few short scripts you can use, such as, "Oh, I would love to hear from you, but I'm not in a place right now that I can do that. So can we talk in 20 minutes? Okay. So you're just giving yourself some time, giving that other person some time. Here's another one. I notice that things are tense. I need to step out for just 2 minutes and I need to release some tension and then I'll be back. Or you could say, wow, it feels like things are pretty tense here in this room. Let's everyone take a big deep breath. I teach hand breathing. It's super easy. You can Google that. I'm not going to walk through it, but you just basically inhale and exhale as you trace your hand. So when we use things like this isn't being cold or dismissive, but this is being proactive in protecting your own nervous system and allowing for healthier interactions later and with other people. The last one is remember that co-regulation is real, and so you can be the calm anchor because contagion works both ways. Calm is contagious too. Regulation is contagious too. Being the peacemaker is contagious too. So when you're around somebody that's dysregulated, when you can show up with a steady breathing, a soft tone, open posture, you can help them downshift. And this is just co-regulation in action. And it's most effective when you are regulated yourself. So for leaders and managers and team level interventions, it helps to do debriefing. It helps to have assigned peer support. It helps to have your supervisors trauma informed. It helps to have check-ins regularly. Reviews and systematic studies have showed that organizational support is very protective against secondary traumatic stress and burnout. So if you lead a team, consider doing brief debriefs after difficult events. We do these at the hospital, maybe not as often as we should. And it's also great to have access to mental health resources. And the last one I wanted to share was to practice self-compassion and seek community. I've talked about this before. So when we can be compassionate with ourselves, compassionate self-talk, that helps us stay regulated and also really seek out community. Some people prefer just a few close friends. Some people need different groups of friends. Some people like lots of friends. It doesn't matter. But just don't underestimate the power of community and peer support that are available and that it's helpful because you don't have to carry it alone. So let's just give a few quick takeaways. Stress is contagious and your body literally responds to other people's stress inside their body. We have mirror neurons that will want to mirror other people's face and their posture and their breathing. And it can spread like wildfire, and we want to be careful about what we pick up. Parents and primary caregivers have an outsized influence on the household's emotional climate and landscape, right? So small regulatory shifts matter. Anything that you can do to become a better culture keeper, anything you can do to be a better regulated human can have an effect on the people in your small circle of your family and even like the shift you're working on and your classroom and anywhere that you go. Secondary traumatic stress is real, and this is repeated exposure to other people's trauma. This is very common in healthcare, in people giving direct care to other humans. So I believe it's definitely possible in teachers, first responders. So protect yourself with using boundaries, debriefing, using self-compassion, and practicing regular nervous system regulation practices like breathing, grounding, humming while you drive, singing, small boundaries, have one-liners to say, hey, let's calm down. All of these things add up. I just read a study that even self-compassion training has shown to reduce secondary traumatic stress. So thank you for joining me today to learn about contagious stress and anxiety. And I hope you learned something new. I would love to hear from you. I would love to help you out. I teach all about this. I've been giving lots of presentations recently, and it's been so fun to help people understand their stress and help prevent their burnout. And you can reach me on my website and have a great week and just take care of yourself a little bit more. And we'll talk later. Every week, you're learning something new here on this podcast, and that is a powerful first step. But guess what? Information alone doesn't create transformation. True change happens when you start to think differently and shift the nervous system patterns that drive your behavior. As a coach and an emotional resiliency expert, that is the work I do. I love to walk alongside you, whether it's one-on-one, in a small group that you choose, or with your workplace team. I can help you retrain your brain and nervous system so that stress no longer runs the show. You'll find ways to connect with me in the show notes. Let's do this work together.